I spent 3 weeks buried in ancient manuscripts, sifting through accounts from Roman historians and texts most people have never even heard of. What I found about the Library of Alexandria, well, it completely rewrote everything I thought I knew about one of history's greatest tragedies. We all know the official story, right? An accidental fire during a war. Simple, tragic, but ultimately, a historical footnote. But what if I told you that's not just wrong? It's a deliberate oversight, that the truth is far more complex and, frankly, far more disturbing. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what the Library of Alexandria truly was. It wasn't just a building with books. It was the collective brain of the ancient world. Over 700,000 papyrus scrolls held the accumulated knowledge of entire civilizations. Egyptians, Greeks, Persians, Indians, Babylonians, all under one roof. But here's the detail that made me pause. Historical accounts, like those from the Greek geographer Strabo, confirm that Alexandria possessed texts on incredibly advanced metallurgy and sophisticated chemical processes. Pliny the Elder wrote that the Egyptians guarded age-old secrets about substances that altered the nature of things. We're talking about treatises on what we would now recognize as primitive but effective alchemy. These weren't just superstitions. They were documented chemical procedures passed down from the temples of ancient Egypt. Now, this is where the story gets really interesting. The destruction of the library wasn't a single event. It was a slow, methodical dismantling, a series of attacks over centuries, and each attack seems to have had a very specific target. Let's start in 48 BC. Julius Caesar is in Alexandria, locked in a civil war. He sets fire to ships in the harbor. The flames spread, hitting warehouses near the library. The official story says the library itself burned. But when you dig deeper, you find that the texts lost were mainly from the secret navigation and geography sections. We're talking about maps of unknown lands, trade routes, and strategic information that the rising Roman Empire absolutely did not want its rivals to get their hands on. Coincidence? Maybe. But the pattern is just beginning. Fast forward to 272 AD. The Emperor Aurelian, putting down a revolt in the city, destroys the entire Bruchian district. And guess what was located right in the heart of that district? The Mausoleum, the museum where the scholars lived and worked, along with a huge collection of philosophical texts. These weren't just abstract ideas. They were scrolls that questioned the very nature of imperial power and discussed alternative forms of government. Once again, knowledge that directly challenged the authority of Rome was conveniently eliminated. But the final, fatal blow came in 391 AD. Under a decree from Emperor the Patriarch Theophilus orders the complete destruction of this magnificent temple had become the last sanctuary for the library's remaining manuscripts. The official reason: to eradicate paganism. It sounds plausible, a classic case of religious fanaticism. But let's ask a critical question. What texts were actually in the Serapeum? This is where the dots connect. This final collection housed the most sensitive material of all. It contained the core of Egyptian esoteric knowledge, documents about the Neteru, the beings, the Egyptians, called gods, who, according to their own hieroglyphic records, descended from the heavens to teach humanity. It held the Hermetic texts, which detailed methods for communicating with entities from other planes of existence. And most importantly, it contained the alchemical formulas that promised not just to transform metals, but to transform human consciousness itself. So, why would a rising Christian empire be so terrified of a bunch of old pagan myths? If they were just fanciful stories, why not simply ignore them? Why the need for such a violent and total annihilation? I found a chilling clue in the writings of Ammonius Saccas, a 3rd century philosopher who studied in Alexandria. He claimed that the Egyptian priests practiced something called theurgy. This wasn't prayer or superstition. It was a practical technique, a protocol for altering consciousness using specific chemical substances combined with precise rituals. This changes everything. The alchemists of Alexandria weren't just trying to make gold because they were greedy. They were studying transformation at every level: material, mental, and spiritual. According to the few Hermetic texts that survived, like the they believed that achieving certain altered states of consciousness allowed for direct communication with superior intelligences. They believed they could access knowledge and power without needing an intermediary, like an emperor or a priest. And now for the secret that kept me up at night. There's an obscure account by a 7th century Egyptian chronicler, John of Niki. He mentions that before the Christian monks set fire to the Serapeum, they didn't just burn everything indiscriminately. They carefully went through the scrolls and selected certain manuscripts to be saved. Not all of them, just specific ones. Where did these priceless texts go? There are no official records. It's a complete mystery, but think about this. Just a few decades later, monasteries in Europe began to demonstrate a sudden and inexplicable leap in their knowledge of chemistry, metallurgy, and distillation skills, and terminology that hadn't existed there before, but which were identical to those used in Alexandria. The sudden flowering of medieval alchemy wasn't an accident. The knowledge wasn't destroyed. It was confiscated. After going through dozens of primary sources, the pattern is undeniable. Every attack on the Library of Alexandria targeted specific knowledge that threatened the established powers of the day. Knowledge about geography that could empower rival empires. Knowledge about philosophy that could inspire rebellion. And most dangerously of all, knowledge about expanding human consciousness, which suggested that we don't need external authorities to access higher truths. The Library of Alexandria wasn't destroyed by accident or by blind fanaticism. It was systematically dismantled because it held the keys to something the powerful could not allow the public to possess. The radical idea that ordinary human beings could, through knowledge and personal practice, transcend their limitations and connect directly with the fundamental forces of the universe. And the most disturbing part, if you look hard enough, fragments of this knowledge still exist. They're scattered, hidden away in private collections, locked in monastic libraries, and buried deep within Vatican archives that have never been fully catalogued. The knowledge of Alexandria didn't die in the fire. It was taken, it was buried, deliberately, and someone, somewhere, still knows exactly where it is. What do you think? Was the destruction of the Library of Alexandria a series of unfortunate accidents? Or was it the greatest intellectual heist in human history? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There's a lot more buried history out there, and we're going to uncover it together. See you in the next video.